Hey guys, this is Tom Hanks, and welcome to another stream today. Of course, as you all know, today is the day that we're going to be doing the community challenge, which was as a reminder to build a competitor for the 2004 Lotus Elise. So, well, automation is starting up. It may take a while. Hey Firebird02, how's it going? Good. That's good to hear. So yeah, currently automation is loading. Like, as I said, it may take a while simply because I haven't really started it yet today, and the first time of the day starting automation always takes quite a while. But you know, we should be good. It takes longer and longer the more files, like the more cars you have as well. So since the quote-unquote garage in automation has been growing due to all those entries, well, not all those entries, but you know, it's I rarely delete cars, and as a result, whenever I build one, it stays there, and then it takes more and more time to load as well. How many cars got submitted? I believe it was 6. So not a lot, but more than with the last community challenge. Yeah. I think this would be an interesting one because this is the this is a sort of a challenge where it's all about how the cars drive, and it's not necessarily like, you know, with the with the 2020 Evo challenge, it was also kind of like, okay, could Mitsubishi realistically make that car? And you know, does it look somewhat like a car that they would make? Whereas this doesn't really fit into the same sort of style of challenge. It's more like, hey, build a competitor for this car. Like, you use this as inspiration and build your own thing that's similar to it in some ways. And yeah, I've already shown my own car on YouTube, but of course I'll give you guys a closer look at it in automation as well. I took a whole new approach to designing my car. Yeah, indeed you did. While we're still waiting for automation to load, gonna go real quick again and see if there were maybe like any sort of last minute submissions, because I did say that the deadline is well, basically right when the stream starts. Looks like I did not get any last minute submissions, so it's gonna be 6. How have you been? I've been good, thanks. Well, in case you guys don't know, I am originally Austrian, but I'm currently in the Netherlands doing a, well, I came here because of a job that I'm doing. I'm doing a technical customer support. So like for AMD, I used to also do support here for Razer, but yeah, stuff like that. Oh, automation is booted up, and I actually do want to move back to Austria at the end of August, and yeah, I did also see a job offer in Austria, actually pretty close to where I'm from, that is in the same sort of that is a similar sort of job, but it pays more, and it's of course also closer to my family, so that's what I would like to do. Let's see. This is my car. This is the one you saw on YouTube. Now, briefly, I want to also talk about what I think makes a 2004 Lotus Elise. Well, first, obviously, it's very small and light. It has a manual transmission, mid-engine rear-wheel drive, of course, and it comes with a conventional engine, with a normal engine from an average car. But because it's so light, it doesn't matter that it doesn't have 1 million horsepower. It's still reasonably quick, right? Of course, the engine did get retuned in more powerful versions of the Elise, and if I'm not mistaken, a 2004 Elise actually got its engine from a Toyota Celica, right? A 1.8 liter inline 4. I took my engine from a BMW 316i, the E46, which has this sort of setup: aluminum, 4 valves per cylinder, disc bore and stroke, VVL, or Vanos as it's called for BMW. But of course I retuned this engine in order to make a little bit more power and rev higher, so that it makes 170 horsepower. It has a 6-speed manual transmission and a viscous limited slip diff. It has sports tires, 17-inch alloy rims. It has vented discs all around. Quite a bit of brake bias, more towards the rear than what you would see as the standard setting. Then quite a bit of downforce, because while this doesn't really have a wing, what it does have is, here there's a lip all across, and then there's two sort of split ones right above that. And of course it has a lip on the front as well. And then we have sport, interior and basic CD, and with variable hydraulic power steering and ABS. And then progressive, semi-active and semi-active. Not the stiffest suspension ever, because the Elise also had a relatively good ride quality, actually. No, it's not a Mercedes, but compared to most other sports cars, it did ride pretty damn well. And so the numbers of this: 170 horsepower, just under 1,000 kilograms, 5.9 seconds 0 to 100, 208 top speed, 45 to 55 weight distribution. I think it's adequate for this type of car. Okay, now I'm gonna show you guys the entries that I got. So there is the Lavora Elise G3, which was submitted by Vinny Scarletto, aka Sedan 57 Chevy. And this has a pretty old school body, but it does kind of work. I think it's it does look sort of like a blend between a Lancia Stratos and a Pontiac Firebird. like a 70s/80s Firebird, of course. And I think it looks good. Maybe not quite 2004, but keep in mind that like the Jaguar XJS was also produced from like 1971 to 96, at which point it already looked very dated as well. So it's and also the De Tomaso Pantera, I think, was also in production from like 71 to, when did they stop making the De Tomaso Pantera? 99, 98 something. Anyway, back to this car. This has a 2.5 liter Subaru derived, as he says, Boxer 4 engine. It makes 185 horsepower, revs up to 7,000 RPM. This is lighter than my car. It has fiberglass panels, 6-speed manual, geared limited slip diff, 215s front, 235s rear. So this is this has 10mm more front tire and 10mm less rear tire compared to my car, but it also has a higher tire diameter. And then we have 2 piston brakes up front, 1 piston on the rear. Some downforce, but actually quite a lot on the rear, to be honest. Not as much on the front, but still some. Standard interior, basic CD. No traction aids at all, not even ABS, so that might be interesting. Standard semi-active and semi-active. Pulling 1.18G. Also somewhat soft suspension. I'm kind of curious why the front sway bars are quite a bit stuffier than the rear ones. This does 0 to 100 in 5.2, but it only goes 192 kilometers an hour top speed. Mind you, that these sort of cars are not necessarily about the top speed. It's much more important for them to be to handle well and to, you know, accelerate at a reasonable rate. And I think this might be pretty good at both of those things. What is interesting about this is that it has a 37% front and 63% rear weight distribution. Because of course this engine is larger and therefore heavier than the engine I used. But also this body seems to be sort of like set up in such a way that it has like basically no weight over on the front and more on the rear. Because it is small actually. It looked a little bit larger than it actually is, to be honest with you. Okay, but overall, this is certainly an interesting way of approaching this. I'm curious to see how this drives. Next up we have the Spectre SP300, which is by Firebird 02. So let's see. Oh, this is the larger body. Okay. Let's see. A carbon fiber monocoque and carbon fiber panels. That immediately jumps out at me and says, especially combined with the larger body, immediately kind of rings some alarm bells and says, this might not be an Elise competitor. But let's check out everything else first. So it's a mid-engine, transverse rear-wheel drive, of course, a 6-speed manual. 1166 kilograms is, interestingly enough, still, I think, yeah, definitely the heaviest we've seen so far, because this is the larger body. And then we also have a 2-liter turbocharged. Yeah, a 2-liter turbocharged inline-5 engine. So this engine as well is not something that you'd necessarily see in an Elise at all. It's, while it may not be super heavy, that is mostly going to come down to the fact that it doesn't have VVL and it has lightweight materials. But at the same time, like a 300 horsepower turbocharged engine, that was just not the sort of thing you saw in an Elise at the time, or you know, ever. It has a 6-speed manual and an electric diff. The manual is completely fine. The diff is also fine, might be a little bit fancy, but it's okay, I guess. And then 220s up front, 260s on the rear. 19-inch alloy rims on this thing. Not all that much in the way of brakes. I mean, lots of diameter, of course, but not a whole lot of pistons. And then we have a decent amount of downforce, both front and rear. And then sport interior, basic CD. Advanced safety, huh? That's an interesting choice considering how much weight that is over a standard safety equipment. It has ESC as well, which is also kind of fancy, and electric power steering. Now that is how this gets, admittedly, quite a bit of drivability, and actually electric power steering is lighter than hydraulic. Okay, fair enough. This has very, very soft sway bars and active sport springs. Now, I think, personally, we'll have to see how this drives, but as far as the numbers and the main components line up, this doesn't seem like very much of an Elise competitor. This seems like more of, you know, a Ferrari competitor. Especially with all that carbon fiber. Like this is in a price range, you see, with 0% markup, which you'd never sell this. With no markup at all. You'd sell it with like a 70-80% markup. If we add like that, yeah, it's 100 grand. So that is not the sort of price range that we're talking about here when you're competing with an Elise. But I guess I'll put price out of the equation and see how this drives on a track. And then we'll take it from there. First impressions, however, are not quite that convincing when it's meant to go up against the Elise and not a Ferrari. Now the Lotus Elise base, this was sent in by, let me check real quick. That is LHHGT. Okay. So this okay, so the challenge was to build a competitor for the Lotus Elise. You've built a Lotus Elise. A car does not compete with itself. So you see the problem there. I mean, it is a really good aesthetic. The aesthetics are a really good approximation of what the Elise looked like. Sure, he did a good job on that. But this, well, the rear is kind of empty. But let's see what's underneath this. That's the 2cc GE engine, which is exactly the one that the real Elise had. This is the Toyota Celica 1.8 liter engine. And, you know, Yeah, it runs very rich. So this would probably be this would probably be not very economical at all. Now the Elise is of course not an economy car. Lotus Elise R74 to 100k. Where? I mean, I live in Holland, where cars are very expensive compared to the rest of Europe, and here you can have a base version of the Elise for 42 grand, 42,000 euros. That is, and of course the euro is stronger than the dollar. I don't think that the Elise is 74 to 100k in the US, seeing as the Evora is like 50 grand or 60 grand in the US, and the Evora is more expensive. So I don't know. Anyway, this is a 6-speed manual with a geared limited slip diff. Really, really small tires and only 16-inch alloy rims. Vented discs front and rear. Quite a lot of rear brake bias as well there. Not very big brakes, to be honest. We have a little bit of downforce on the front and some more on the back. Not a crazy amount by any means. Basic interior and no entertainment. And then you have standard safety, variable hydraulic power steering and ABS. Active sport suspension, adaptive dampers, passive sway bars. This is made from aluminium semi-space frame, okay. And then fiberglass panels. .59 seconds 0 to 100, 226 top speed. That is pretty fast. Weight distribution is 43 to 57. Still fairly good. But again, this... Look at this, for example. That's like a quarter of the Spectre that we just saw. And yeah, especially the base version of the Elise has always been the sort of, that has been my definition of the track budget category, is the base version Elise. Is that if you want to have fun on the track and good performance, or reasonably good performance for the budget, then you should get an Elise or maybe a Caterham. But you see the problem here. I asked you guys to build a competitor for the Lotus Elise, and this person built a Lotus Elise. He built the car that we were supposed to all compete against. So I'm not really quite sure how to score this in that regard. Next up we have the Barracuda G17, and while this loads I'm gonna check real quick who this was from. Oh, this was by Gonzalo Pereira. I like this actually. I like the color. I like the pearlescent darker shade of blue there on this paint. I hope this comes across nicely on video. I like this a lot. I mean, the rear end styling is kind of 90s-ish. But overall, I like the design. And let's see what this is made of. So this is a semi-space frame fiberglass panels. It's got a 6-speed manual, mid-transverse. double wishbone. Let's check out the engine. This is a 1.7 liter 4-cylinder with 5 valves per cylinder. Nothing crazy or unreasonable. But it does have titanium converts, which are a little expensive considering the sort of price range we're talking about with an Elise here. Only 45 cam profile, which is why this makes peak power at 6400 RPM. What's weird is that it revs out to 8500. You can see that from, say, 7500 RPM, it just drops. It just drops quite a lot. I can see why you would go up to 7500 RPM, because that's a pretty flat top end there. But from there, it just completely drops and goes down to what, 95 horsepower at 8500 RPM. It's not worth it. And one reverse flow and one straight flow muffler, which means this thing is gonna be somewhat quiet actually. Which at least doesn't really have the reputation for being quiet, but okay. It's got a 6-speed manual and an electric diff. Sports tires, 235s rear, 195s front. It's got vented discs front and rear. The rears are bigger than the fronts, and it has a little bit of brake fade. And then this has no lips or wings at all, which is going to be interesting on the track. And then we have standard interior, no entertainment, variable hydraulic ESC, active sport, semi-active and passive, and slammed to the ground as much as it could be. It is fairly soft as well, to be honest with you, but the roll angle is only 1.4 degrees. .3 seconds acceleration, 214 kilometers an hour top speed. That's adequate for sort of like the entry-level version at least. That's completely fine. We're not setting any, you know, speed records here or anything. Again, the material cost. Well, the price is like less than 20 grand here. If we add 70% to this, it's still 32 grand. And it still does decently here. So yeah, first impressions of this are actually pretty good. The engine might lack a little bit of power in the very high RPM range of this thing, because as we saw, from pretty much here on onwards, it just drops downwards and it's not really that effective anymore. That's the only thing I really don't like about the way this is set up as of right now, at least. Maybe this will expose some weaknesses on the track in Beam as well. I don't know. We'll have to find out. Then there's the Duhan Spider. Which is... let me see. I think that's by Anselmo Pereira, is that right? Yep, exactly, that's by Anselmo Pereira. Right, so again, this has the mini McLaren body, which we've seen a few entries with. It's got a 6-speed sequential gearbox, light HS steel space frame chassis and fiberglass panels, and double wishbones all around. The engine is a 1.8 liter 5 valve per cylinder inline 4. It has all the lightest materials, which is maybe kind of expensive, but we'll find out how that affects the price as well. It's got 172 horsepower, 181 newton meters of torque, which seems more than enough for an Elise. 106 kilograms of weight on this engine. We've seen ones that were like 150 kilograms. So this is certainly fairly light. This has an electric diff. We've set that it has a 6-speed sequential. And then sports stars with 205s front and 235s rear. And then vented discs all around, 2 pistons up front and 1 on the rear. Although the diameter is, like the brake size is bigger on the rear than on the front. We have a fully clad under tray, we have sport interior and no entertainment whatsoever. Variable hydraulic power steering, ESC, standard 90s safety, active sport, semi-active and passive, okay. Now this, again, does not have any downforce at all. As far as the design goes, I like it. But maybe the headlights are a little bit too big, but it still looks fine. I mean, it's nothing overly dramatic, but it's certainly looks fitting for a car of this type. And let's see what sort of numbers this makes. 245 kilometers an hour top speed is, I think, the fastest we've seen. 5.2 seconds 0 to 100 is very good. And then 979 kilograms, it's pretty much right where you'd expect this to be. Hey LV100 Egg, how are you doing? Good cornering as well, yeah. I mean, yeah, you do expect these sort of cornering Gs from a car that competes with the Lotus Elise. Right, we've seen similar numbers with all the other entries so far as well. And then we have the Halpin Tarek, which was sent in by Animated Gaming, if I'm not mistaken. Yep, that's Animated Gaming's entry. Now this already looks like more of a Ferrari competitor, doesn't it? It has an HS steel space frame, fiberglass panels, 6-gear sequential gearbox, weighs a little bit more than I would like as well, and then what the okay, so this has a 3-liter flat-plane V8 with 388 horsepower. Yeah, you see, the thing is, this is supposed to compete with an Elise, right? These are Ferrari numbers in 2004. Obviously in 2018 you're not impressing anyone with 388 horsepower, but in 2004 that was Ferrari territory. Like, there's no questions asked. That is not where the Elise would be. This is still a fairly light engine at 150 kilograms, but at the same time it is 3.8 seconds acceleration and what, 260 something kilometers an hour top speed, I guess. That's way faster than you would realistically expect for a car in the category that we were speaking of. It has a geared limited slip diff. It has Sports Stars 275s on the rear, 235s front, 18-inch alloy rims. And then we got vented discs all around. Not all that much rear brake force, but still enough. Also, quite a lot of brake bias towards the front. Fully clad on the tray, lots of front downforce, not a crazy amount on the rear, but still some. And then basic interior and no entertainment to try and keep this thing light. But the advanced safety doesn't help with keeping it light, admittedly. Active sport suspension, semi-active dampers. And overall, this is the default suspension setup, isn't it? So, with the fact that this does 0 to 100 in 3.8 seconds and 262 kilometers an hour, I'm gonna treat this as a different car. I'm not gonna treat this as a competitor to the Lotus Elise, because it just isn't with an engine like that. Even this costs like half as much as the Spectre, probably because of that full carbon fiber chassis and panels. But yeah, this does not fall into the same category as a Lotus Elise at all. It might not be that much larger in physical size, but the purpose of it and the approach to it is very different. And I think that rounds up all of the entries that we have. Of course, we are now gonna have to go to BeamNG.drive and see what they feel like on the track. Allow me to take a drink of water, because it's actually very warm here at the moment. All right. Okay, you should be seeing Beam soon. Hopefully. Beam where yet? Oh, there we are. Okay, so we're gonna go to the automation track. I already exported all of the cars to Beam before the stream, so no need to do that again. And now we're gonna see how the cars that we just saw in automation actually drive. Because numbers can only tell you so much, right? Numbers are just numbers. So I believe for starters, I'm gonna take a drive in my own car, and I'm gonna, you know, the purpose of this is of course to load the track or to have Beam load the entire track as we're driving along, and to also maybe introduce my own car a little bit with its driving characteristics. It's fairly loud for a 4-cylinder. what I think is an important trait of the 2004 Lotus Elise is that it sticks to the road really well, and it does not power oversteer. It actually understeers at the limit. So yeah, of course you can still get the tail out if you do stuff like this and spin it, sure, but as long as you're being responsible with it. Whoa, that was quite a bit of a lag. As long as you're responsible with it and you're not being an idiot, a 2004 Elise is actually very hard to spin. This car, however, does have one problem, and that is that apparently the downforce does not seem to do very much. I was gonna show you another problem in the upcoming left-handed corner, where it's basically like you have to brake into this corner, where this is very unstable, and I mean even there at the sort of lower speeds that we're going at, because we crashed beforehand, even there it rotated the back around pretty drastically. And are we gonna make it? We bumped into that. But in any case, when you're going fast, when approaching that exact corner, then this will just spin like nothing. Like, I've tried counteracting that by changing the brake balance, adding more rear tire, adding more rear downforce, and it did not help at all. So at this point I have no idea what... I feel like a lot of automation cars need some downforce to handle at speed. That's how it is, though. That's just how it is. Even in real life, that's no weird thing. Like, if you wanna take fast corners fast, you need downforce. There's no other way around it. Okay, but that was my car. So now that the track should all be good to go, let's jump into this. In comparison to Beam cars? Oh, Beam cars do not handle very well at all in my experience. I've tried most of them before I really got started with exporting cars from automation. Most, if not all, Beam cars handle quite poorly, in my opinion. Oh, this was the car that doesn't have ABS, right? I feel like automation cars often can't even take fast straights fast. You think so? I feel like the automation cars that you export to Beam are usually quicker in acceleration in Beam than they are in automation. Except double clutch cars for whatever reason. This car, well, it's kind of it handles decently, for sure. It handles well, but the lack of ABS is kind of a problem, I'm not gonna lie, for two reasons. Whoa, okay, almost lost it there. For one is that you can't actually brake into a corner. It does actually have good braking power, but you never, and this is a problem of Beam, not of you know, physics or the way cars work, is that when you're braking, and your car has ABS, you never see how fast you're actually still going. Whoa, okay. The beam cars, I don't think have proper amounts of up force. Up force? What do you mean? Oh yeah, they are so right, plenty fast. It's keeping them going on a straight line that can be a difficulty. In my experience, I feel like the ABS is a bit off on imported cars. I mean, you have to be fair here. The Beam developers are of course separate from the automation developers. Oh, we spun again, huh? And it's hard enough to even make this happen, that you can drive cars that, you know, were exported from a completely different game with you know, different codings and everything, and probably also a different engine. I don't think this is the UE4 engine. And yeah, like, it's hard enough for them as it is. Now try to imagine making the downforce numbers that automation gives you also behave the way that you would expect them to. Short resume on this: it handles decently, could maybe use a little bit more rear tire, and it could definitely use ABS as well. It's not bad though. Let's drive the Spectre next, which I think was the next car in the lineup. The ABS model is really detailed. It's just I prefer to run my cars without it, with how it is in its current state. Okay, fair enough. So this is the 5-cylinder turbo car with 300 horsepower, which should be fairly quick. So this doesn't quite have the grip coming out of the corner that yeah, here I was being gentle with the throttle, but this certainly has a lot more power than you'd be used to having in an Elise. Let's see how fast this goes on this straight. Oh, kinda scary. Pretty good there, but lots of understeer. Yeah, this just does not feel as responsive in the steering as an Elise would. And I guess it's just the extra, it's just down to the fact that this is a larger and heavier car than, and not only in Elise but also the other entries we've had so far. You know what this sort of makes me, whoa. You know what, you know how I feel about this? This is not actually an Elise competitor. I feel like this would be the predecessor for Lotus Evora, and there is a difference there, mind you, because the Evora is a larger and a heavier car. It has a beefier, more powerful engine, but it's also like less aggressive in its setup, and it sometimes also likes to stick the tail out, which we've seen with this as well. So I think that's where I would put this car. We have the actual Lotus Elise, so let's drive that. See how this. No, I mean, the default BeamNG cars don't have proper aerodynamics. I think automation cars are probably more accurate in that respect. Quite a bit of a push there at the end of it as well. But this does hug the apex of pretty much like every corner. It feels very easy to drive this thing pretty damn neatly around these corners. Even for me, and I'm not the best driver. So let's see the sort of speeds we would get here. Even there, eager to turn in, but still sort of stable as well. Completely fine here. I like the way this drives, but there I was a little bit, yeah, there was that understeer on the limit that I spoke of with the real Elise, so all good in that regard. Oh, okay. I mean, this drives well, but at the same time, it drives so much like an Elise that, combined with the fact that it looks like one, I don't know how to judge this then, because the challenge, the community challenge, was to build a competitor for, well, basically this car. So I'm not quite sure how to judge it. It does well, but it's the exact car that we were all sort of supposed to build a rival for, as opposed to just replicating it. Anyway, we'll have some more cars to look at. Where is there's the Barracuda G17 117S. It's a repatched model. Still counts as a competitor, you think? Whoa, okay, some brake oversteer there. Remember, this car does not have any downforce. But it turns really well. I like the way this handles. Yeah, in the... And here's... we see that what we saw in automation, in the graphs, namely that past like 7500 RPM or something, the engine does sort of start to slow down a little bit. Okay, it did took this corner with no drama, despite not having any downforce, so that's good. You know what, I actually prefer this car in terms of how it handles, and it might not be quite as quick, but as a base version, I mean, you have to consider that that 2004 version of the actual Elise had a base version with 120 horsepower, and this has 132, so it's completely fine. I like this. This is a more original take, while still having a lot of things in common with the Elise, both in... well, not really in terms of looks, but in terms of how the general car is set up, the hardware, if you will, and also in the way that it drives. Yeah, I like this a lot, actually. Very easy to go through this whole course unscathed. Yeah, this is... I think this is my favorite so far. So what else do we have? We've had this, with which we just drove. We've looked at this. We've looked at that. Okay, so we only have the Halpinteric left to go, which is yeah, immediately once you hear the engine, this is a Ferrari. This is not an Elise. Oh shit! That sound in the very top rev range sounds like valve float or maybe the pistons are breaking or something like that. But man, that hurts my ears. Like right about now. It is of course very fast, but also kind of scary. Whoa. It sounds like an Elise, yeah, sure. Whoa. So we just spun in a straight line. That doesn't really make me all that confident for the part that's coming up. Whoa. Yeah, this is fast and loose. Both words do not really describe the Elise very well, to be honest with you. At least the more tame versions of the Elise. There was of course a sort of hardcore version with 192 horsepower, but oh no, it doesn't have the brakes. So this I would have given this a chance if if it had the sort of grip that you would expect from a sports car like this, but it's way too way too hard to control. And one of the I shouldn't be looking at chat if I'm doing this. It spins in a straight line like an ease with grippy tires on the front and shitty tires on the rear. I mean, even then an Elise probably wouldn't spin in a straight line, I don't think. But in any case, this does not have very many things at all in common with an Elise, and as a result it's not a... it isn't really a competitor for it. It's a very fast car, but this is not this is not a competitor for the Elise. All in all, wait, is there another car left? Did I leave anyone out? No, I think we're good. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and then 6. Yep, those were all the 6 entries. So to me, I have a pretty clear winner, and that is this car. It could use a little bit more refinement in the engine and a louder exhaust, but in the way it drives and in the way it's built, I think this is the best competitor for a Lotus Elise in 2004. It feels very planet. It's agile. It revs high. It inspires confidence, right? That's what the Elise did most of all. Whereas the Halpenteric, which just drove, does not inspire a whole lot of confidence because it likes to spin everywhere, even in a straight line. This, on the other hand, well, that just went on the front a little bit too early, therefore I got carried out a little bit too far outwards, but this doesn't have the brutal acceleration that the Halpenteric has, but at the same time, this is the base version with 132 horsepower. You can easily work on this engine and then get 170, 180, 200 horsepower if you want to, and then this thing will be pretty quick as well, I'm telling you. Yeah, this feels completely safe. Look at that. This car has no downforce fixtures, and it just made it through that corner flat out. A little bit of a wiggle there, but overall this is the sort of car that you would want to take to a track if you've never been to a track, which I also feel like the real Elise does a really good job at filling that role, at performing that role, because it handles extremely well and inspires confidence, yet at the same time it's not fast enough that you'd be really afraid that you'd be, killing yourself. And with all of that being said, I think this is the best competitor to a 2004 Lotus Elise, and congratulations to there were 3 different, let me get this right, this was Gonzalo Pereira, I think. Let me just pull it up real quick just to make 100% sure. Yep, that was Gonzalo Pereira. Congratulations for winning this community challenge. He did a really good job with this car, in my opinion. Even if not all the people on the stream here liked it, but I feel like in the way it drives and in the way that it's built, it's the most logical competitor to a Lotus Elise. And as I said, you can easily improve on this engine and make it more powerful, and then you'll have a serious sports car. And with that being said, I believe that it is now time to call the stream. We're through with the community challenge. Congratulations to Gonzalo Pereira. It's been fun. We've had 2 more entries than with the last community challenge. I of course want to make some more community challenges in the future, and I'll keep you guys up to date on YouTube. And yeah, that'll be it for the stream. Thank you very much for tuning in. Hope you guys enjoyed, and I'll see you tomorrow with another stream at 4 p.m. GMT. Until then, have a good one. Bye bye.